So we're going to do something just a tad bit different during our sermon slot today. And we're going to do a little bit of a text study. So our B'nai Mitzvah for tomorrow, Henry and Sam are going to pass out a text sheet. I tell the B'nai Mitzvah that one of the best perks of officiating bar mitzvah is, or bat mitzvah, is that they have to babysit the rabbi's children after they complete it. But this will do in terms of this text study that we're going to do tonight. And one of the reasons we're doing a text study is because there are 200 communities all across North America that are participating in HIAS, the agency that was formerly the Hebrew Immigration Aid Society, now just goes by HIAS, in their National Refugee Shabbat. So that's pretty neat. 200 Jewish communities across this nation are observing this or commemorating this on this Shabbat at some level. Some speakers, some text studies, some movies, some program, and we're going to do a little bit of a text study. And the reason we're doing it on this Shabbat, and the reason HIAS chose this Shabbat to have this text study, is because of the parasha. Parashat Lech Lecha, which our B'nai Mitzvah will read tomorrow, is a parashat of journey, is a parashat of trips and transportation and going. And it is a very rich parasha, and it connects to this idea of how do we respond to our refugee crisis today, as well as a challenge for us a little bit for the future. So I've included a little bit of the Torah portion, and we'll have somebody read it in a second. For those of you who might be streaming, we've included a link with this text study on the streaming page. So that's pretty impressive, isn't it? Come on, how good is that? So many thanks to Rachel and to Bria for helping out with that. So you can follow along with the text study as well. And just as we read the beginning, talks about Avram or Abraham's journey, and somebody put in an article today that if Abraham was to make the same journey, he would need 5 visas, because he would cross Iraq, Turkey, Lebanon, Syria, and into Israel. So we can only imagine how complicated that journey would still be today. So let's take a look at the Torah portion. Would somebody volunteer? We're all following along, so I don't think you need a microphone, but if somebody volunteer to read the beginning of Genesis 12 out loud, somebody with a loud voice. Steve. Thank you. So this is a key text in the Jewish tradition. We know this. This is often thinking about, we just sang about it earlier, our junior choir sang this, and God will be a blessing, and God will make you a blessing. And this idea of this journey as a significant journey in our lives. Any thoughts or comments when you look at this text? Anybody have any thoughts or comments about anything unique in this section? Don't be bashful.
Did he have slaves?
What's that?
Was there slaves?
The question was there slaves? There probably were slaves. They probably would have brought the whole community, which would have included the people, everyone that worked for him. So, yeah. Anybody, any thoughts on this text? Anything that strikes you? What about the order? Sorry, Susan, yeah, please. Right, so there's a sort of a recognition, and that's one of the reasons that we talk about this as National Refugee Shabbat, is we know this story, right? And we know how hard that this traveling must have been. So, anything about the order of the text here, of any of the order about what, of all these papers here, anything about the order about what he's leaving. I'm just interested in anyone have any comments. Go forth from your native land and from your father's house to the land that I will show you, and I will make you a great nation. Anybody thoughts about that? Yeah, Susan. Oh, sorry, Peg. I'm so sorry. Yeah, yeah. Yes, and which requires a major leap, right? I mean, to this trust in this promise is not something that's easy. Like we have no belief that this necessarily will hit that. And so there is this idea of sort of this longing and this trust in this promise. Yeah, anybody else? Yeah, Jenny. Right, so this is a major step. You're leaving everything that's familiar, your father's house, your home. This is a serious, significant journey that takes a significant undertaking. Let's look at Rashi's comment on this. This is Rashi, 12th century French commentator, one of the great commentators, comments on this Torah portion. Anybody want to read for us where in the Rashi commentary? I'll pick on you. I know you. So, Ken, will you read for us if you have that right there? So there's this parallel here that Rashi picks up, that traveling is a very difficult thing. One, it breaks up your home, that Jenny said, right? It reduces your wealth, and it limits your name, all seen in this text. So what is needed in order to take a risk, to take a travel? It's a good challenge for us to think, what is going through people's minds when they decide to take a risk to travel across to distant lands? And Rashi sort of tells you he needed the confirmation of the three blessings, that God should promise him with children, that God would promise him with wealth, and God would promise him with a great name. And as we talked about earlier, potentially, we can see the parallelism into sort of the refugee plight that we have today, a little bit in sort of what are the risks and what are the potential rewards in this searching. Let's read Rabbi Neil Kaminsky. He's a rabbi from outside of Boston who talks about this parasha as a sense of the Jewish people, but also in Lech Lecha. Yeah, Alan.
Rabbi Neil Kaminsky on Lech Lecha. For the rest of his life, Avraham Abraham is an outsider wherever he goes, not a privileged native of the land he lives in. Abraham set a pattern for much of the subsequent Jewish history. In Babylon, in Europe, in countries all around the modern world, Jews have lived as immigrants, an identifiable minority within a different host culture, a sense of vulnerability and sensitivity to feeling like an outsider has contributed to a Jewish mindset. The Torah enjoins us to care for aliens, an accurate translation of what is rendered as strangers in most texts, because we know the heart of the alien, having been in his or her shoes ourselves.
Want to keep going? Perfect, yeah.
In today's world, concern for immigrants and refugees is not an abstraction. Stories and images of whole families, men, women, and children, fleeing for their very lives trouble our minds and hearts daily. The unlivable conditions that force people to risk their very lives are well known to us. War, violence, oppression, poverty. Our ancestors, too, have known all of these.
So when we think about our refugee crisis, and we think about how we're responding to refugees in this world, and on the back I put a whole lot of facts from HIAS about the current refugee crisis, we know that this is actually part of the Jewish DNA, right? This is part of how we feel and how we respond to people all across. This is our very first story, right? This is our very first story in the beginning of the Torah. This is our first Jew who goes off as a refugee. And since that moment, throughout our history, we have been doing this wandering. And we have been refugees in countries all across the world. And we've seen positive times and we've seen tough times. And to know that this is part of our DNA, really from the beginning, from the Torah portion that Sam and Henry will read tomorrow morning, is a very powerful image. I think it's one that fuels some of the work that we do at Beth Am. It certainly fuels some of the work that HIAS is committed to. But when we think about our commitment to refugees, Beth Am's adoption of 2 refugee families this past year from Afghanistan, or our partnership in our Sunday program working with a refugee school on the island of Lesbos in Greece. It's part of not just what we do because we like to be good citizens, but it's part of what we do because it's part of the fabric of who we are. This is deep in our bloodstream. And I love this idea that even from Abraham, even from Abram, this is part of us. So maybe we'll read Rabbi Nancy Kasten, who's a rabbi in Dallas, as a final piece, and then we'll conclude our service. Yeah, Laura. Oh, 2 Lauras right in front of each other. Anyone. Go for it.
Objectively, my circumstances are the polar opposite of the 68.5 million refugees, displaced persons, and asylum seekers who wander the earth in search of the place they belong. The immigrants and people of color and religious minorities and LGBTQ persons who are now regularly and systematically marginalized and discriminated against in their own country. I can't change the fact that I am a person of privilege, but I can try to let others know that I care in word and deed. My nest overflows with blessings. It is time for the power of those blessings to be shared outside the nest, with people and groups who desperately need them. This is the Refugee journey I am on, to do my part to realize the full benefit of God's promise of security and prosperity.
Hopefully that's something that we can continue to embrace at Beth Am. For more information, you can check out the HIAS webpage. And if you're interested in being part of the Beth Am commitment to refugees, you can talk to myself or Rabbi Martyr or one of the other clergy. And we'll wish you a blessing wherever you go. May you go forth in strength and in peace. And we'll continue our service.